How's it going, everyone, and welcome to Our Ranch. Today I'm pretty excited to be sharing with you the Contractor 640. Now, what exactly is the Contractor 640? Well, it is Armasight's latest offering in the thermal rifle scope arena. Now, there are a lot of things to get into with this video. Electro-optics nowadays have a ton of features and specifications, so if you don't want to sit through this entire video, check the description below. I will have timestamps so you can skip around to what you may be interested in or what you came here for specifically. That being said, I like to make these videos longer format because if you are someone who's seriously considering investing in a thermal optic, well, I believe you probably want as much information as possible before pulling the trigger on that investment. So I will briefly cover what comes right out of the box with the Contractor 640. I'll give you a walk around of both the controls on the outside. We'll go through the menu, system, all that. Lots of sample footage, and I'll get into my thoughts and impressions after using this now for a little over 3 months and several hundred rounds being sent downrange through this optic. Now, one last administrative note before I kick off the review is that Armasight did reach out to me seeing if I'd be interested in putting a review together of the Contractor 640. I want to make sure you guys are aware of that for transparency purposes. Unfortunately, I do have to send it back when I am done with this review. So spoiler alert, it's going to be a little painful to send back. I have really enjoyed this optic, guys. So if that's all you want to know, did I enjoy it? It's a great optic. Absolutely, I enjoyed it, and it is a phenomenal optic. But I'm going to give you a little bit more details than just that. I will get into kind of the nitty-gritty of my thoughts and impressions while behind this optic.
This is cheating, just so you know. Dude, I haven't missed.
If after watching this video you do think the Contractor 640 is for you, I do have an affiliate link, and that information will also be in the description below. Armasight does run occasional promotional sales, so go through that link and see if I can get you a discount. If worst case, you're just going to help give the channel some kickback at no additional cost to you, which helps me continue to make content like you are seeing today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the Contractor 640. Now, let's talk first about my initial impressions when I pulled this thing out of the box for the first time, because I feel like they are somewhat relevant to the review here. And that is that this optic just felt like one of the highest quality electro-optics that I have ever handled to date on this channel. It just feels like it is actually made for rugged and professional use. A lot of the electro-optics that I have used previously on the channel felt like not necessarily that you have to baby them, but if you threw them off a cliff, they're probably gonna break in multiple places. Not that I tried with the Contractor 640, but it feels like something you could potentially actually go to war with or use for military or law enforcement applications. It just feels like it is made like a tank. Now, I do want to do a real quick unboxing just to show you exactly what you can expect to get with the Armasight Contractor. So you open it up and you're presented with this really nice carrying case. We'll get back to that. You do have a warranty card, and you can scan the QR code to register your device, and it's kind of nice message because they welcome you to the Armasight family. So just, you know, it's the little things sometimes, guys. Of course, you do get your standard literature with detailed instructions on how to operate the Contractor. A pretty nice thermal zeroing target. Now, inside this nice carrying case that I pointed out is obviously going to be the optic itself, but we're going to save the best for last. There's a couple more things that are included. You get a USB Type-C cable. This is going to allow you to tether the Armasight to your computer and pull files off of it. And you do get a nice little microfiber cleaning cloth that can tuck away and clip onto a belt loop, a backpack, gun case, whatever you'd like. It'll stow away so that you don't get it dirty, and it's ready to go should you need to clean your optic. And last but certainly not least is going to be the Armasight Contractor itself. Now, I do want to point out that the Contractor is already pre-installed to a Kinetic Research Group quick detach mount, and more on this later. I'm going to do a quick repeatability test in this review to see how well it returns to zero, since the QD functionality of this is probably one of the most impressive I've seen to date in terms of a quick detach mount. So I do want to talk about the mount that they include with the Contractor. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick walk around of the Contractor. So on the top, you have a pretty straightforward power lever. So you actually push it in and then it rotates into the on position. To turn it off, you push it in again and rotate back off. I actually really like that. So it makes it hard to accidentally turn the optic off or on inadvertently. It's pretty cool setup. I do actually really appreciate kind of a mechanical switch, for lack of a better way to put it. You do have two different turrets. They both have functionality by just rotating them. They also press in. There's short press functions and long press functions. We're going to get into that later in the video. You do also have this external record button. Its sole purpose is to start recording through the optic, which I really appreciate that it's that simple. You don't have to go through any internal menu system. There's no weird button combinations. It's just as simple as pressing it to start, pressing it to stop recording. I think that's probably one of my favorite features, being a YouTuber or someone that records their hunts. I really appreciate that. So for those of you that do want to record what you do with this optic, it is really straightforward to do so. There's no learning curve whatsoever. Now on the right hand side of the optic, there's a nice tethered cap that reveals the USB Type-C port. Again, more on that later in the video, but it has a nice O-ring and keeps things incredibly weather sealed, and it just feels very high quality all around. Similarly, on the opposite side, there is a little set screw that you undo, which will reveal the battery compartment, which houses two CR123 type batteries. And once again, you have a really nice tether to make sure you don't lose this cap. So they really did think of everything, and it seems like they built it for pretty rugged use, or people that are truly going to use the optic for what it's designed for, which is out in the field, on a hunt, somewhere outdoors where you don't want to be losing small parts. On the rear, it does come with a rubber eye cup installed. You can easily remove that if you're not interested in utilizing that. The rear diopter is adjustable to focus to your eye, and then the front objective lens also rotates. It has some nice knurling so you can get a good grip on it so that you can focus on the image itself. And then also built in and tethered is a front objective lens cover, which again, pretty useful. Keep that optic clean, keep it protected from dirt and debris and scratches when you are not using it. The last feature to note is a Picatinny rail that is on the right hand side. It looks like there's some set screws that it can be removed should you want to remove it. So it gives you some options if you do want to mess with mounting a red dot sight, lights, lasers, etc. You are good to go. You don't need infrared illuminators when pairing with thermal, so don't see why you need to pair one of those on there, but you do have some real estate here on the optic itself to add additional supporting accessories. I do want to go ahead and show you all the internal settings of this optic. Now, please keep in mind this is not intended to be instructional. It is just intended to show you all the variety of settings and internal features to the optic. So I still recommend that you read the manual if you do invest in this, but this will definitely kind of help orient you. Now, in case you want to know what we're currently looking at, it's just the lamp in the corner of my studio here, so that there's something kind of warm and kind of giving you that thermal profile, so it's not just a blank wall. Now, we're going to start with the left turret. So if I single press, you'll notice in the top left of the screen, it's toggling what's highlighted from white hot. Now I'm on default. So that is when I single tap the left turret. Now when I move the turret on one of those settings, it's changing through all those different color palettes. So now we're back on white hot. If I go over to default, it's kind of some presets. So see sky, indoors, detect, forest, and back to default. Now see sky is actually one of the ones I tended to prefer just because I found the contrast to be a little less severe than the default. But it really just depends on the environment you're in. But nonetheless, just know that, for example, even if I go to see sky, you can then change the different color palettes. So there is an overwhelming amount of options here. Now to make things even more complex for you, if you want to fine tune, I've now long pressed the left turret, and you'll see the first thing that comes up is enhancement. So you can change everything from contrast, sharpness, brightness of the image, gamma. So without going through all these, you can see that each one does influence the thermal image again. So now you're kind of calibrating that thermal sensor to give you the most pleasing image or to tweak it to the environment you might be shooting in. So a ton of control over this thermal sensor. Now bore sight is going to be next. And by the way, I'm just using the turret to kind of scroll, and then I'm single tapping. Long holding will back you out of the current menu. So now if I know where I'm currently impacting, I will just leave my crosshair on the bullseye, and then you just move this X to where the impacts are. So the left turret moves it up and down, right turret left and right, and it is that simple. I'll roll some quick footage showing you my zeroing process with this scope and thermal scopes in general, but this made it very, very quick and effective to do so. So this has kind of been my go-to for zeroing thermal targets. I just throw some electric tape on a standard target, and you can see I'm actually considering that it is a thermal scope. That is a pretty tight group. So now what I'm going to do is I'll take a piece of the electric tape and I'll just put it basically where that group is. It's essentially on center. I'll make sure it's just to the right. And then I'll use the feature in the scope to move that reticle to the 0, and I should be pretty much spot on now. So as mentioned here, we have that target I just showed you. You can see that little bit of electric tape above. Again, just kind of a trick of the trade I've learned over the years. And I'm just going to scroll and place that orange X over that mark that I had inspected with my initial group when zeroing this optic. So after I have it where I am pretty much set, I'll go ahead and accept those settings, and you'll see my reticle will shift in place because this is a digital 0, guys. So that's all your scope is doing. Now, of course, what good is a 0 if you're not going to confirm it? So one way I know best, especially with thermal targets, hard to see. Here's a steel target. It's about 6-inch diameter at 200 yards, and I can now ring that steel all day long consistently without missing a beat with this optic. So I'm going to go ahead and hold the left turret to exit so I don't accidentally change anything. Going down, you can preview everything. It's not going to let me do that because I'm currently recording, but it will pull up windows of all the files that you've taken. Now, in the very bottom left of the scope, it'll tell you how many photos and how many videos, kind of where the recorder is currently counting up. I did just format this scope prior to rolling this clip, so currently my file count is 0. Once I stop this one, the video icon will display a 1 next to it. So there is a compass, so you can see in the top, it gives you different settings, and then you can choose to calibrate it. Mine's been working great, so I'm going to leave that alone so I don't screw it up. And then you got more settings, so you have your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, which both need to be enabled in order to use the app. You can change your 0 profiles, which is really nice, again, given that it has a very, very awesome quick detach mount included. You could make multiple profiles depending on which of your rifles you want to stow this bad boy on. You can enable for the recordings to start based on recoil, change your units from imperial to metric, and then here's how you format the card, which we'll talk about that later. This may actually end up being a handy feature, and then you can also default back to the factory settings. So I'm going to long hold, it'll back me out. I'm going to long hold again, and there you have it. Now, moving our way over to the right-hand turret, if I tap it once, it's going to perform a manual nuke function. The image looks pretty decent right now, so I don't know if you're going to be able to tell. Let me see if I can kind of interfere with what it's kind of calibrated to, trying to make it a little bit fuzzier an image. I want to go ahead and tap that right turret, and it's going to clean up any noise. So now if I long hold the right turret, it will let me choose my preset profile for when the scope powers on. So we can change it to forest, detect, etc. In my opinion, I don't know why they have that there because it's so easy to switch with the other turret, but it is there and it is an option. You can change your reticle type. There is a handful of selections there, even no reticle if you just want some thermal footage. It's kind of a nice option there. And moving on, you can also change the color to what best suits your eye, which again, very nice. Oops, didn't mean to long press. We're going to go down to brightness, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but it does have 10 brightness settings, the 10th being bright enough in the sunlight without need for the eye cup, at least in my experience. And I don't know if, again, you'll see that, but it is a setting. And then last, there is the rangefinder function. So when you tap this, the left turret will control the height of the target. So that's what I'm changing. The distance is changing with it. So let's pretend that this battery that is sitting on my shelf, if I knew that to be 2 feet tall, then I'm going to use the right turret to now adjust where those lines go. So I'm decreasing that. So if it was If that was truly a 2-foot target, then it's saying I should be at 66.2 yards away. So kind of a handy little function there. Now the last thing is if I just twist the right turret without going into a menu, you get a picture-in-picture window, and you can control through the settings where you want that to be. So it can be top left, top center, or top right. I like top center. I do enjoy this. You'll notice this is a 2 power magnification. I'm just going to aim at the plug on that battery that is charging. You can go to 4 and then even 8 power. So when I'm hunting, this is kind of nice to get a precise initial shot, and then you have the wider field of view for follow-up shots, especially hog hunting. Once you shoot, they take off. This is really, really helpful for that. And again, without diving any deeper, this was not intended to be instructional, but there you have it, just to kind of give you some exposure to all the different features and settings and functionality internally in this optic. And of course, what kind of thermal optic review would it be if I didn't give you a little bit more sample footage? Now, one thing I do want to mention up front when we are going through this footage is that to the user's eyes, everything is crystal clear, everything is very, very sharp, but there is some compression that happens when you download these files. For example, when you are looking at the text in the top left of the screen, it doesn't look like it is super, super sharp, but when looking through the scope, it is absolutely tack sharp. And to point out the compression even further, you can barely see that center dot in the reticle when the video file has been compressed and then downloaded and then re-uploaded into this video I'm editing. But again, to your eye in the optic, you can absolutely see that center dot in the reticle. So I did want to give you a little bit of context. Unfortunately, there's not a way for me to show you how beautiful this optic looks to your eye, but nonetheless, this gives you a general idea. Now I do want to chime in terms of the sensitivity of this optic. This is me shooting a paper target during the day, and it is more than sensitive enough to pick up the actual impacts. Next, I wanted to just give some context to what you're looking at here, just so you kind of have an idea of the range. The shed in the very background is at roughly 1,000 yards, and the cows are 300 and 350 yards respectively, with that one in the front and in the back. I just kind of wanted to give you a variety of things to look at. So again, kind of near and far away, and then way, way, way in the back are more cows in that clearing above that tree line, about 1,500 yards out. So a more than capable optic up close and far away. Now, I did also want to test the extreme limits of this optic, and this is absolutely worst case scenario. So those white dots that you currently see in this color profile are actually cows at right at around 2,500 yards away. Now, why this is extreme, it was a 102-degree day out in South Texas. This is during peak summer for us. So the entire environment is hot. Everything is hot. You can see those fence posts in the foreground just glowing white hot from the sun. So the fact that this optic can still differentiate the cows, not only at this distance, but in those absolute worst case temperature conditions, really impressed me. And again, when toggling through the different color palettes, it kind of helps depending on the situation that you have so many different options to choose. So in this case, the black hot, look like the cows popped a little bit more to my eyes, but there are so many different settings again for you to play around with, and I just wanted to give you guys kind of a feel for all those options inside of this optic. So overall, this optic was pretty incredible in terms of the thermal resolution and thermal sensitivity. I can't tell you how valuable it is to have a thermal scope when you're hunting. So right here, you may not have otherwise noticed that there was a coyote hiding in the brush while peering on our cows, but with a thermal optic, it's got you covered. Now that I've gone over all the features and specifications of the Contractor 640, I think it's time to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The whole point of this video is wanting to share the pros and the cons so you can better evaluate if this is the right optic for you to invest in. So let's go ahead and start with the cons, get the bad stuff out of the way so we can end on a good note. Who doesn't like that, right? The biggest issue that I have uncovered to date during my approximate 3 months behind this optic is that it appears whenever you exceed 4 gigabytes of internal storage, and just to caveat that, there's 15 gigabytes based on when I plug it in the computer, it's reading 15 gigabytes of available space. But when you exceed 4 gigabytes in terms of all the video files you may have saved or stored on here after recording, they are no longer able to be downloaded to the computer. It almost looks like they have been corrupted, except that I can still view them in the optic, which is kind of interesting to me. So I tried that on both a Mac and a Windows-based computer. Same result, and I've formatted it, cleared the memory, and it is a repeatable issue. So the good news is it's a repeatable issue, right? And that leads me to believe that a firmware update should be able to fix that. But as of the time of this video, this is an issue that I have uncovered and how the scope is currently functioning. Now, related to video transfer, the output speed of this optic seems to be really, really slow. So again, we're talking like the ballpark of 2 gigabytes of video files on here. It takes 30 to 45 minutes sometimes, it seems, to transfer that. And on the receiving end, I have a pretty much maxed out computer to today's standards. So that's not the limiting factor. It does seem to be the output speed on the optic. Now, the next thing is that the rangefinder unfortunately doesn't appear to work. So if you watch the menu walkthrough portion of this review, then you'll know that the rangefinder essentially lets you put a known target size. So that is a user inputted data point. And then you adjust 2 horizontal lines to be at the top and bottom of that known target size. And it then should spit out a distance calculation based on those parameters. Unfortunately, when I had known distances and known target sizes to verify the accuracy or functionality of the rangefinder, it seemed to be off by a factor of about 30%. So pretty grossly inaccurate at the time of this video, but the good news is, once again, that seems to be a firmware updatable issue. I think maybe someone kind of botched the internal formula for the rangefinder calculator inside. So hopefully that's a quick patch, but again, time of this video, it's not functioning as it should. Now, the last thing is me being nitpicky, but it's me just trying to go through everything I have taken notes on while reviewing this. Whenever you are inside the optic and you set the brightness of the screen inside and then power it down and go to power it on again, whenever it's going through the boot up menu, it seems to default to the max brightness only during the boot up menu where Armasight's logo flashes, and then it returns to where you have set it. So if you are trying to save some battery and you want to turn it off in the dark, during a nighttime hunt, don't have your eye behind it when you're powering it on, because your eye is probably not going to be adjusted to that extreme brightness and it may temporarily blind that eye. Just something to be aware of, something I noticed, and I would also believe that this is fixable via a firmware update. So that's literally the only issues with this optic that I've experienced to date, which is pretty impressive when we're talking about an electronic device that is mounted onto a weapon system and undergoing recoil and being thrown around in the field. A lot of times when I'm using digital optics, I experience a number of freezes. Here we go with the pros. Not a single freeze or functionality issue other than what I talked about previously. Everything worked flawlessly, 100% reliable. Now, from a mechanical standpoint, the 0 was maintained flawlessly. In fact, this mount made the user experience that much better. So I did verify the mount, and let's go ahead and show you. Now, having a reliable and repeatable mount right out of the box allows you to capitalize on the fact that you can save a number of zero profiles within the optic, or maybe you and a buddy have split custody over this beautiful baby, and one weekend is his, the next weekend is yours. You can have a zero profile for each user and send it back and forth between the two of you or multiple people. And the fact that you know that this is a reliable and repeatable mount will let that scenario work without you worrying if you're going to miss the shot on a hunt. Armasight advertised about a 4-hour battery life. In my opinion, I think that's really conservative. It's probably a 4-hour battery life if you have the brightness maxed out. It seemed, based on the battery drain that I was seeing, that I would get probably 6 to 8 hours. I'd never actually killed the scope out in the field, so I don't have an exact timeline. I did put fresh batteries in before each hunt, but my estimate is that it's probably closer to 6 to 8 while I was using it on the lowest or second to lowest brightness setting. And another major pro to this optic is that it is probably the most user configurable thermal optic I've used to date in terms of you being able to optimize the thermal sensor. So not only is there a large variety of color palettes, there's a handful of default settings you can scroll through to kind of tweak things based on the scenario you're in. But if you want to go even further, there's a whole enhancement menu, which I do walk through in the menu walkthrough portion of this video if you're interested to see that in more detail, where you can then optimize and fine tune things even more. Because this being a thermal optic, it's very dynamic environments you might be using it in. One environment may not look the same as the next environment, and it allows you to absolutely tune it to get the most out of this thermal sensor inside of this. And one last honorable mention in terms of the pros of this optic is that it does have a pretty user-friendly Armasight application that you can pair with it. It is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth enabled. It'll even allow you to live stream whatever you're seeing out of the optic in real time. I didn't notice major latency or delay. So the cool thing about this is that you can watch, if you're trying to teach someone how to shoot, you can monitor what they're doing. If you want to watch your buddy hunting or your buddy wants to watch you while you're on a hunt, you can absolutely do that. It has so many different features and perks. It's hard to make you aware of all of them. So hopefully I left most questions unanswered, but if there's anything that you still want to know after this point in the video, leave a comment below. I try to be as responsive as possible. And just a reminder, if after watching this, you do want to pick one up for yourself, check the description below for my affiliate link. It's going to cost you nothing extra. Worst case, you're just helping support me. But there's a good chance that Armasight may be running occasional promotions through their affiliate links, so I might even be able to save you money, depending on the time you're watching this video. Content like this takes countless hours, guys. It's a lot of work, so I really do appreciate any and all support, especially since YouTube is no longer monetarily supporting or keeping this channel sustainable. So I really can't thank you enough if you do choose to support me through any of the affiliate links I have across my videos. And I would also like to thank you for taking the time to stop by the 4MR Ranch channel. And as always, guys, have a good one.